Thanks for joining me today, Past National Commander Dan Ludwig. It's a privilege. We're going to talk a little bit, hopefully, about legacy and heritage. And I think you probably will be able to provide some practical and hopeful information from your experience in the American Legion on this. How long have you been in the American Legion?
I'm now in my 50th year as a member of the American Legion.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. All of it, I'm a proud 50-year member of Leo C. Peterson Post 54 in Red Wing, Minnesota. Yeah.
In Red Wing. And Red Wing skirts is right alongside the Mississippi River, isn't it?
It is. We are a river town.
You're a river town. Beautiful. Thank you. Can you share with us a little bit, how did you get involved in the American Legion?
Well, it's like, I think it's a similar story to many. I befriended a fellow, Red Wing is not where I grew up. I moved here to go to work at the Prairie Island Nuclear Power Plant, and not very soon after I got here, I befriended a fellow by the name of Louis Logan, a member of the Post, and in our discussion, he found out that I was a Navy veteran, and he invited me to join the Legion, and I said, "Why not?" And I was influenced by the American Legion in my hometown, growing up in Avon, Minnesota. And so when he invited me to join, it wasn't a hard sell. I joined, and I didn't get active for a number of years, but I joined right away. So that's the reason why. It wasn't like I had some passion to be involved in the four pillars. I didn't know what they were. He said, "Join the Legion," and I said, "Let's pour it
Okay, all right." And then it just kind of naturally developed.
Yeah.
At some point, somebody said, "We need Dan Ludwig would be a great national commander."
Well,
how did that happen? Did it?
Yeah. That was not
active?
Step 2.
No, I think what I've learned about the American Legion, because it's a volunteer organization, and it really relies upon the passion and the character of its members to invest who they are into it. And they really have to believe what the American Legion was, is, and is going to be. And so you really have to personify or have within you that capacity to nurture the American Legion's legacy.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And so somewhere along the line, you were hook and sinker into the American Legion.
Absolutely. You develop a passion for the mission. Because
do you?
Yeah. Because it's, the passion for the mission is all important. And there's no matter how well you do, there's no end. There's no, there's no end point. So the cause goes on, and there's always work to do. And,
always.
Yeah. So for those of us that really become involved, it becomes a lifelong mission, a lifelong passion. And you hang in there until either you die or you just can't do it anymore.
Right. Yeah. I think for me, there's been a few things that have really grabbed my attention, and it really has to do with the values of the American Legion, and then learning more about the history, like what the individuals that began the American Legion, the costs, and what they were working towards. And then me investing my time as I appreciate what it does and what it can do. And so I'm invested. I became a Puffle a few years ago after. I'm like, okay, I have so much bandwidth. It's like you only have so much bandwidth in a day. What are you going to invest it in, right?
That's right.
Yeah. As a past national commander, because you were groomed, they saw some character in you. It was a process, and then you become the national commander. And can you tell me a little bit about that year for you and your relationship at the federal level?
Well, it's a pretty amazing year. Uh, First off, it's a 2-year process leading up to that year. Well,
Oh,
actually, there's
okay.
a long process prior to that even, but
Is there?
once you become a formal candidate, it's a 2-year process. Yeah, I visited 41 states as a candidate, and prior to being elected in Indianapolis in '95. The year I was national commander, I was on the road 335 days.
Oh
I
my.
visited. Let me think now. I visited 47 states and 15 countries
Oh,
in 1 year. Uh, it's a pretty whirlwind experience. It's I don't. I, it, it's very difficult to try and sum it
yeah,
up in a matter of a few words.
yeah.
You're the spokesman for the American Legion.
Hmm.
You're essentially, hopefully, a motivator for the troops as you travel from state to
Right.
state. I mean, that's essentially what your mission is. Uh, you do a lot of. You don't go to the. You don't. Some people think you spend a lot of time in Washington or at the Indianapolis
Hmm.
office. That really isn't true. You do visit a fair number of congressional offices. You don't go to the White House a lot. I
Mm,
was in the Oval Office once as national commander to visit the
okay.
president at that time. It was President Clinton. Uh, but you do. I visited a fair number of senators and representative offices. I spent very little time in Indianapolis. You're on the road, you know.
Yeah. And I think that's probably consistent with all commanders in the American Legion is I know there's a big debate in the American Legion about are you a figurehead or are you the CEO? Are you the one who does the change? And people get offended by the word figurehead, but to a large degree, your character and who you are represents when you said that.
Yeah, it's you're the CEO, but it's different than being the CEO of a company where
Yeah.
it's we hold a position for a long time. First off, our positions are determined by the resolution process. The
Hmm.
commander and the officers of the American Legion do not dictate policy. That's dictated by
Yeah.
the resolution process. The
Hmm.
officers and the staff, they're mandated to follow the resolution. So we don't make decisions. We
Hmm.
do our best to implement the resolutions that are adopted by the delegates at
Yeah.
conventions. So that part's handled. We don't have to worry about that. We need to try to implement.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
uh, it really boils down again to lobby for the positions that the convention establishes, and to so you're the presider at meetings,
Hmm.
and you're the spokesman. I mean, there are times when issues come up and the
Yeah.
media wants a statement from the Legion, or we want to give a statement to the media, and it
Hmm.
goes on. If it's a written statement, it goes out over the commander's signature, or sometimes it's the commander actually makes the statement to the
Right.
media. So
Yeah.
that's essentially what it is.
So at all levels in the American Legion, the third party in the relationship is always the resolutions. It's always the bylaws. It's always the Constitution
Absolutely.
because that is the constant, isn't
Yeah.
it?
And
Yeah.
the resolutions determine what our positions are, and
Yeah.
being consistent with what our
Uh-huh.
mission is. I mean, we don't want to adopt resolutions that are not germane to our mission, to our four pillars. So
Hmm.
therefore, there are resolutions that come up the chain that get ruled out of order because they're not germane to who we are. So, Jen, with very few exceptions, the resolutions that are adopted and become policy are appropriate to who we are.
Yeah. And who is the American Legion? That's a big question.
We are the American Legion.
We are the American Legion.
Right.
The members are the American Legion. Yes. I think it's probably one of the most democratic organizations I've ever come across. As far as how it works, resolutions and who are the people in charge, and really they're the caretakers, if you will.
Sometimes people get confused by that, but that's really how it works.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And your character and who you are as an individual, that integrity piece plays out very clearly in the American Legion.
Exactly.
Yeah. You can't hide behind a position or your paycheck.
That's right.
The power is determined by the people.
The people that care and that count. We don't care what what your gender is, what your politics are, what your religion is. We care that you're a patriot, that you're a veteran, and that you believe in freedom, and you care about veterans, and that you care about this country. You care about the veterans' family. That's who we are.
That's who we are. And that's going to live beyond us.
Absolutely.
And I think that's one of the reasons I really wanted to talk with you, because you've been in for 5 decades, and legacy or heritage starts to become something you think about. And you were talking about, what is our mission, and is it germane to the American Legion's mission, which ties into the heritage piece. And you know a lot about the history of how the American Legion was founded, like why they became the Legion.
I wasn't there then.
No, you weren't, but that's a fair statement, definitely. What they wrote about why they joined and became the Legion, and the very title, the American Legion, tells it all, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, the beginning history is really amazing, because I've studied it. The policies that were laid down by our founders back in 1919 those policies still exist today. Now how we apply those policies changed with the times, of course.
Yeah.
But the 4 pillars were established. Our preamble, which I know I've said 1,000 times now in my 50 years, moves me as much today as the first time I said it. I think those 10 precepts for God and country, and those 10 precepts are just precious. They're like our 10 commandments, if you will. And I think it's amazing. That was all in place by the time the first National Convention was concluded in November 1919 in Minneapolis. Those founders were amazing people. Now, obviously, we need to the particulars need to deal with the current circumstances, but that bedrock foundation has been in place for 105 years now.
Yeah, values have been pretty consistent throughout human history, and they're values that every human being attains or would like to have. And so working towards them sometimes can be a challenge. Duty, loyalty, mutual helpfulness. I appreciate that one.
Yeah.
I think that one's probably the most difficult for all of us. Mutual helpfulness.
I think
I'm
sometimes,
going to help you.
And maybe this isn't fair for me to say, but it's like a prayer, if you will. We get to the point where we rattle it off without necessarily really pondering on what it means and what it should mean to us as we say it. If you really think deeply about what those 10 precepts say, and it's pretty powerful. or you can just
Yeah.
simply rattle them off without thinking about it, and it's just words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In my lane, my husband introduced me to the words idle wrote.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Exactly.
they don't mean anything to you.
Yeah.
So the goal is to marry the head and the heart together.
Exactly.
And then that's where the passion comes from.
Very much so.
Yeah. And the American Legion's mission is large. Those 4 pillars are huge,
Absolutely.
but they're the future.
Absolutely.
Children and youth. Why would we want to invest our time and energy into the youth?
They're the future of this country.
Yeah.
And the future does not lie in people like me. I'm the past.
But it does lie in the investment of individuals like you to be willing to continue for something larger than yourself, right? That's the legacy
Yeah.
piece.
You know, folks of my vintage hopefully can influence that next generation, that youth, so that they have the values, they understand what freedom is, the price of freedom, and they have the
Mm.
appreciation for what it means to be a free citizen, what it means to be a patriot, so that the values of this country will endure. Because some people think this way of life is an automatic, and
Yeah.
that it can't slip away. Well, that isn't necessarily so. It needs the price of freedom, amongst other things, is vigilance. It requires
Yeah.
patriots, and
Yeah.
hopefully we're developing patriots.
One of the things that I appreciated about the American Legion was the American Legion had the ability to merge the North and the South. Because was it 50 years or 60 years after the Civil War? America is in World War I. And the North and the South still considered themselves separate.
To some degree, they still do.
Yeah, that's true. They still do.
No,
Yeah.
that's probably wasn't really fair, but we now it's really more in jest that we are really one country now.
Because we can come together with the same values, and that's one of the things that the American Legion was able to accomplish. Was they were able to bring the South and the North together in a decision-making capacity because of the values. To me, that's fascinating, and I didn't realize that was one of the American Legion's main goals, was how do we merge everyone together.
Yeah.
It really gets difficult when you're in a post meeting, isn't it? Or when you're coming together as an executive committee, is how do you keep what is germane to the American Legion the main focus?
Yeah. To a large degree, I think most posts are pretty successful at that. Unfortunately, from time to time, because of strong personalities, because we're human, you'll find where a post will, because there's a passion by a strong personality, they'll get in the weeds, so to speak, and that's unfortunate. And it's important that we stay on the right road and adhere to the democratic process. Have honest and fair, open discussion, no intimidation, and if there's a difference of opinion, after a fair and open discussion, put it to a vote, majority rules, and then everybody accepts the decision and walks out of the meeting without ill will. Yeah. But sometimes it don't happen that way.
Yeah. Can I switch subjects just a little bit? Because I'm curious about what you considered your role as past national commander to be. Because that's like what are we, 40 years? 30 years. 30 years you've been a past
Just
national
about now,
commander.
yeah. It'll be, well, I went out of office in 96, so it's, 28
Okay.
years ago.
Okay.
Well, I still have some, at this point, I still have some official responsibilities. I'm on the National Executive
Oh,
Committee for life. I'm on the State Executive Committee for life.
okay.
And that's by constitution in both those organizations. And I'm still elected to the Post Executive Committee, and I'm on the District Executive Committee as well. But really, hopefully, and I'm human, and some days I'm sure I fall short, but hopefully hopefully I'm a positive influence to folks that haven't been around as long as I have been. Hopefully I'm a mentor, a teacher. Uh, Hopefully I can show folks that are younger than me the value of the American Legion and what we stand for, and why they should put their time and treasure into this organization. I know there have been times and circumstances when I've been successful. I also know there's been times when I've fallen short, but I keep trying, and I always will.
Yeah.
So I think that's
I
really
think
my most important role when it gets right down to it.
it's the past national commander. The mentoring piece is offered in little tidbits, is what I've experienced from you. There's little wisdoms that are dropped, and you have to pay attention, because I'm like, oh, that was a Danism that I needed to pay attention to. And what a blessing it is to have somebody provide that wisdom, because otherwise there's this huge vacuum, and we have to create it all on our own. But with individuals that have been around and been on the block, if you will,
And it's
we are afforded that.
and it's a fine line. It's important to teach the history, and it's important to teach the the foundations of this organization, but it's also important not to thwart new ideas. The last thing I really get upset when people say we've never done it that way. One of the most exciting things to me is when you get folks, I don't care how old they are, but new folks, but particularly new members that are half my age, when they bring a new enthusiasm and they bring fresh ideas. At my age, and after being around for 50 years, I'm getting to be my new ideas and my enthusiasm is not nearly what it used to be, to say the least. And this organization needs an infusion of new ideas and new enthusiasm. And there's too often people my age dampen that enthusiasm and those new ideas, and that's really and that's unfortunate. And I really try hard not to do that. And try to instill the knowledge and the history and but not to stomp on their enthusiasm. And that's a fine line, and it's,
It is a fine line, isn't it? Yeah.
And then sometimes it's hard to know which side of the line you're on, so to speak.
Well, and sometimes you can cross over. Every once in a while, you can go to and then I think it teaches us that forgiveness and grace and mercy are even a part of an organization such as ours.
Well, yeah, it always is.
Yeah.
But we're human,
Yep.
And
Mm-hmm.
it, it, every day, we all have days when we're the donkey, and some of us are.
Yes. Yes.
Some of us have more donkey days than others.
And some days you'll have a donkey day and didn't even know it. And there's like, oh, shoot.
And that's where forgiveness comes in. You got to appreciate
I
when your
know.
friends
It's like,
forgive you.
now I have to go clean up. It's true. And, one of the things that I struggle with is what's in it for me. I find that to be a little bit of a consumer mind. And one of the things that I find is our culture, we have so much coming at us and we have so many options that we really have to kind of sift through where we're going to invest who we are with that consumer mind, but leave the consumer mentality. Do you know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about as far as it's a transactional relationship, and the American Legion is really relational. There are transaction occurrences, of course, when you're looking at vendors and who you're going to align with, but the American Legion is relational.
Yeah,
It really has to do with developing those relationships.
it is.
And
and when you understand that the cause is so much bigger than yourself, then personally, it's never been. I've never really been hung up on what's in it for me. It's never been important to me because by the grace of God and my good luck in my 8 years in the Navy, I've never really had a real need for the things that the Legion fights for. I have some issues, but they're not compared to wounded warriors. I'm not there. So there's so many warriors that need so much more help in their families.
sure.
So I'm fortunate,
Yeah, the investment piece. It sounds like you had more of a capacity, a larger capacity to invest in,
Yeah.
where some people have a need for more resources, and then they're able to invest in, because our job is to help people, bring people all the way home to the best of their ability. That healing piece is one of our main pillars.
And and it's certainly one of our emphasis today with our, be the one. There's so many of our warriors maybe have come home in body, but they haven't come all the way home.
No.
And it's a tough mission.
Yep. And the American Legion, I have appreciated deciding to take the forefront of that. Is we're going to do something different.
Yes.
How do we do that? And we know relationships, that's been a part of the American Legion's fabric, is going to maybe lead the way in that. Is how do we build those relationships where you have that dependency upon each other to some degree. You can lean on me.
Yeah. And that's what makes this organization worth everything that you can put into it.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of a transcendent organization, and I think the organizations that transcend one individual's ability to do something are the ones that become successful in their own right. People will gravitate towards them.
And that's why the organization has a future. It's in today's world there's millions of influences, literally, particularly in this wonderful world of social media and but and there's all kinds of influences, many good influences, but there's certainly a lot of influences that would lead you down a bad road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the American Legion is always, as an organization, is always gone down the road of truth and justice and the road of freedom. The only problem we really have had with that, we don't seem to have been as successful as we should have been in telling that story to the general public.
Oh,
But when we walk that road and when we successfully tell it, the general public and certainly the veteran community that don't belong to us yet, when they get it, they want to belong. And
yeah.
because and that's why the American Legion will be here in 100 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't worry about it. Yeah, if you look at the 105-year history, we've had ups and downs. I mean, it's just the way life is, and we'll always continue to grow and do our business.
Yeah, our goals. Women have been a part of the American Legion since the foundation of it, even before women could have voted in this country. But my experience and many of the other females' experience in the American Legion has been challenging.
And and by the time you came along, the challenges were minimal compared to what they used to be. While it's
I've heard stories.
While it's been the official position of the American Legion. Unfortunately, way too many posts didn't adhere to official policy. There was a lot of chauvinism on the local level because of who the local leaders were. Well, that is, in my 50 years, has changed immensely. In my early years, as an example, when I go to state conventions, first off, the attendance was much larger. We'd have, 800 delegates on the floor. And there was 3 women, and they were tough ladies, World War II veterans. And I don't remember. Gosh, I think there was virtually no. I can't remember any district. Retha Lucking was the first district officer in our district, and that was when she was district commander. I was a district vice commander, and when I was state commander, she was a vice commander for me. But I mean, they were trailblazers at that time in the 80s. Now, when you look at the number of ladies that are holding posts in district and state offices, and you look at the number of women veterans in attendance at district and state functions, it'll because of the human nature, I suppose there will always be some struggle, but it's come a long way from where it was.
I think it's part of that, like what you said, that inherent human nature as we go towards what is like. We kind of gathers with like, and you can't get away from that. But at the same time,
nice if we could.
The American Legion laid the found work. This is our goal: is that all have equal voice, regardless of skin color, regardless of gender.
Someday, if it would be wonderful if we could get to the point where a veteran is a veteran is a veteran.
Still a goal. It's a worthy goal,
and we'll continue to try to march to that end point. But and we make progress. I don't know if we'll ever get to the final end point, but we're going to keep on trying.
It's kind of like mutual helpfulness.
There you go.
Is it idle rote, or are we putting that into practice? Because putting into practice might cost you something. It might cost you having to sit back. It might cost you listening to somebody that you're not too sure about.
There are things that are worth fighting for.
Definitely. I'm going to switch us off to some other subjects. Because I'm curious, did you have any hobbies in your life other than volunteering?
When I was younger, I did a lot of hunting in Montana.
Oh,
Not so much in Minnesota. I did a lot of hunting in Montana and more so in South Dakota. But as I got more deeply involved in the American Legion, I had less and less time to do that, and so I really haven't done that for a long time. In fact, I sold 13 guns a long time ago.
oh
So I
my.
wish I had some of them back now. They were really, I didn't have, they were,
They're
there
kind
were
of
some really
valuable.
pretty nice guns. At any rate,
Oh,
that's long. And I've done an awful lot of reading. To this day, I think I have, well, certainly, I think 400 books, and they're all hardbound. I don't buy paperback, and I don't read, uh, I read mostly history, a lot of World War II history, lot of uh, a lot of biographies of generals and admirals and famous people. I have a lot of books on General Patton, although I was a Navy man. I have a real passion for
oh, there. Thank you.
General
I can see all of you
a
now.
real
Thank you.
passion for General Patton. I
Uh-huh.
don't know why, but I have probably 30 books on World War II submarines that are written typically, many of them by the captains of World War II submarines.
Oh,
Uh, so that's something that I really enjoy, and it's something that I learn from these books because they're very
mm-hmm.
inspirational, and that's something I can still do because physically I have. If I even tried to go pheasant hunting today, I don't think I could do it because I just really wouldn't have the lung capacity to do that anymore.
Oh,
But sitting in my
yeah.
chair, I could still read
Thank
if the
you.
words aren't too big.
Sometimes keep it. I'm glad I have a phone because I can look them up on my phone now
Oh yeah,
instead
but
of the
you
dictionary.
got
And
if I
like,
have to
what
stop too
word?
often to look up a word, that's just really.
It's like, oh my gosh. Yeah. One of the things that you remind me of is like when you're reading history of challenging events such as wars and change. Change is where you have the opportunity to become something that you're not. Um, and you reach within your character to either pull out more dignity and shine that up a little bit more, or throw that out and go for something less. And, if we're not challenged, we don't change.
That's right, exactly. I'm reading
So,
and it's a simple little book, but
uh huh.
I'm going through it for a second time now because even though it's simple, I'm picking things up. It's called I heard God laugh.
I heard God
Yeah,
laugh.
and it's
Oh,
and the 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 purpose of the book is to teach you how to pray. Actually, most of us think we know how to pray,
oh,
but it goes
mm,
back to what you're talking about. Simply, I've learned a lot of prayers, of course, as a child, and
hmm,
you rattle these prayers off, and it goes back to the same thing we were talking about saying the preamble.
yeah.
It's an amazing book. Uh,
Oh,
anyway,
well, thank you for the recommendation.
yeah,
I'm always looking for books to read.
it's pretty cool.
I heard
I
God
heard God
laugh.
laugh.
Thank you for that. Um, do you have any parting words of wisdom, or maybe just parting words? I'll give you
Yeah,
the option.
I mean, when you put conditions like wisdom on there, that really.
Let's just stick with the. Do you have any parting words?
Well, what I would really hope that each of us, me included, would focus on why we belong to this organization, that we would understand the need for the cause, and that we would focus on the cause and not get hung up on frivolous things that are unimportant. You know, for those of us, particularly that belong to a post where we have a building and a business, a bar and food. God, there's too many places where we get hung up with disagreements and frailing fights over whiskey and bingo and bar burgers. It's all wonderful, except they're not Legion programs.
Right.
Yes, it's wonderful to have those places where we can get together and socialize, but it's really not the cause.
Yeah.
It's important that we don't. In so many cases where we have fights and disagreements that hurt the American Legion, it's not about the four pillars. It's about what goes on in our building.
Yeah.
And that's sad. And of course, what's different today from the old days, in the old days when there was a disagreement, who do you tell? Nowadays, when we treat somebody badly, now they get on social media, and in 2 minutes, the whole world knows that this post or that poster is a terrible place, whether it is or not. It is according to this individual.
Yep.
And that just really is harmful to our organization and to our cause. And that's the sad part about social media. While it's a great tool, it has its negative side. And for those of us who are long-term members or been members, if we really think we need to criticize another member, have the courage to do it to them face to face, and don't do it in social media.
Yeah. What do they call that? Is it airing your laundry in public?
It's it's just really wrong. Yeah, I would hope people would do that and spend your energy doing the good work and skip the judgment. We need to love each other. We need to work for the cause. It's more important than our trivial little differences. And when we love each other and do the good work, there's nothing we can't accomplish together.
Thank you for that.
All right.